triggered yet? If not, you will be. Because here comes the triggered Christian.
There are some people, and I'm just looking at the live chat now, for example, and the triggered Christian is saying, actually, this is all about religion, not race. But I do think that is a big difference, Kelly J, between the Reform UK position and the Restore Britain position, because, of course, Restore Britain is very much opposed to the Islamist takeover too. But I'd say much more than Reform UK, they also appreciate that ethnicity is part of the immigration debates. So who are you aligned to, Kelly Jane? Charlie Downs or Julia Hartley-Brewer? Let's go. There is now a war on the right over the desperate need to save Britain's native white population after Rupert Lowe made stopping the demographic takeover of the disunited kingdom a red line pledge for him engaging in peace talks with Reform UK and Nigel Farage.
Restoring our demographic security. It is projected that white Britons will become a minority by 2063. Nothing demonstrates the demographic vandalism of mass immigration more than that. Importing millions of people from third world nations is changing our population in a way none of us ever wanted or voted to support. It is unacceptable and it cannot be allowed to happen. We must be unafraid to grasp that nettle, however painful the establishment backlash may be.
Within Restore Britain, there has been shock and horror, but not surprise that the MSM will talk about their other red lines, you know, like the referendum on a death penalty, banning halal and kosher meat, while studiously avoiding what they view as the most important, the extinction of the British population. Party staffer Lewis Brackpool posted, I've seen many interviews today where the interviewer deliberately ignores Restore Britain's main pledge, demographic security. Many are trying to confuse or manipulate where we stand. Do not let them get away with dodging that pledge. So it was in that context that an extraordinary on-air row erupted on Talk TV between the firebrand Restore Britain spokesman Charlie Downs and the presenter Julia Hartley-Brewer. And this brawl, this fight, this feud has galvanised the split on the right. It was sparked when Charlie claimed that Julia had joined the rest of the MSM by ignoring Rupert's demographic demand to protect the native white population from takeover.
I noticed, by the way, that yourself and others in the mainstream media have actually routinely failed to mention all five of our policy.
I must have mentioned them about 5 times on air yesterday.
Well, many of your colleagues have routinely failed to mention one of the most important ones, I would say the most important one, which is demographic security for the white British people. We're going to become a minority in this country within the next 40 years on present demographic trends. In 2024, only 54% of live births were to white British mothers. This is an existential threat to our nation, and Reform have always denied this.
Why? Why? No. Let me give you a bit more detail around why I'm saying why.
And Julia did give that detail, sparking a debate about white ethnicity to erupt online.
I think an awful lot of people in this country, of all skin colours, share a concern about the major demographic changes in this country in terms of people coming from other countries, not speaking our language, not sharing our values of adherence to the law and integrating, etc., etc. However, I don't think that's got anything to do with anyone's skin colour. So why is that a threat to our country?
White British is a census classification.
Yes, I'm not disputing that.
Yes, so I'm not talking about skin colour, I'm talking about a census classification that includes...
You are talking about
English,
skin colour.
Scottish,
white.
Welsh and
The word
Irish.
white. It's a bit of a clue there.
Yes, well, I mean, it's a descriptive category used
There
by
is
the
an ethnicity that is, English, white, British white. Yes, I get that. And, going back many centuries, we are and have been always until about 20 years ago almost entirely a white nation. I get that.
And this is where what I believe to be a fundamental difference in opinion begins.
Why is Why is there being fewer births to white British as opposed to, say, black British or brown British people? Why is that a threat to our country?
Well, I think you've just answered that yourself, Julia, and that is that this is a very recent change in our nation's demographics, and an unwelcome change. It is a change that nobody ever voted for. In fact, since modern mass immigration began with the passing of the British Nationality Act in 1948, the British public have routinely voted against mass immigration.
Okay. Now, again, you know the MSM desire in these cases, and I'm not saying Julia, but the wider MSM is to say that Charlie's explanation here is somehow racist, which is where other examples are imperative. Because I stress, no one would say that if the Japanese or the Nigerian or the Jamaican were unhappy about being replaced by white imported citizens. So when Charlie challenged Julia's point on this, it kicked off as she told him to shut up because she claimed he was embarrassing himself.
You are conflating immigration and white. Yes, I realise that ethnically British people have been white, so they have been. However, there are an awful lot of people who we will live and work alongside, and children go to school alongside, who are not just British as in they've got a British passport. Their parents were born here. They were born here. They know no other country. They consider themselves completely British. They are British. My grandparents on one side came from Ireland. I consider myself, my father was born here, my mother was born here, I was born here. I consider myself British. People with exactly the same credentials, but maybe their family came from the Caribbean or came from India, but they have lived here 2 or 3 generations. They shared language, values, beliefs, integrated, assimilated generations ago. Why is they having babies? Why is that a threat to this country?
So, Julia, you are here acting as a mouthpiece for the regime that currently governs this country.
Do shut up, Charlie. You're embarrassing yourself.
What you're saying.
They then clashed on what integration even means.
Why do you keep mentioning skin colour then?
As I've already said, and as you have acknowledged, white British is a census category used by the government to describe the English, Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish. In other words, the native peoples of the British Isles.
Native, yes, I accept the word, I accept that, but why? But just, you know perfectly well, and with all due respect, I don't think you're as clever as you think you are, that you are constantly conflating the issue of immigration. I've just said to you, there is an issue with immigration and people who are not integrated, but I don't see what that's got to do with skin colour.
What's your definition of integration, Julia?
People, I think I've already said it 2 or 3 times, but people who speak English fluently, who are completely sharing values, belief in the law, equality under the law for women, gay people, I would suggest would be a key value now for the vast majority of Brits. You can marry who you want, you can worship who you want, you don't shut down to it. I would consider queuing, being nice, fairness. I would consider a lot of those to be British values and being integrated.
So if all of the white British people currently in Britain were replaced by Pakistanis and Somalians, all of whom believed in queuing, would Britain be the same as it is now, or would it be different?
This is
the key question, Julia.
No, it's not the key question. You're making a glib point. You're the one who keeps saying it's about immigration, and then you keep talking about skin colour.
Okay. At that point, Charlie claimed the conversation was being shut down, something Julia denied.
And as you have just demonstrated, yourself, others in the mainstream media, and indeed many of those in Reform and the Conservative Party are not prepared to have this conversation because
I'm perfectly prepared to. I'm not trying to shut down the conversation. I just thought I was going to have a conversation with you about Restore and Reform. We come back on again another time when we've got more time, when we will debate that in more detail. When we have got more time, we'll make sure we've got it the decent time.
Charlie reacted to that move, writing, according to Julia Hartley-Brewer, a person is British if they speak English, believe in the law, believe in equality for women and homosexuals, believe people should be allowed to worship who they want, don't shut down debate. That is absurd. For almost the entirety of our history, our people have actively opposed most of these values. They came into fashion 5 minutes ago and will be forgotten just as quickly. Yet the British people will remain because our identity is not defined by trendy liberal values. She refuses to answer whether Britain would be the same if all white people were replaced by Pakistanis and Somalis who believed in these values, probably because if she took her argument to its logical conclusion, she would have to say yes. That is where this line of thinking leads. How anyone can take it seriously is beyond me. Now, of course, there is a wider clash going on here. And I'm very honest about it because you have a media ecosystem where the mainstream conservatives, and I very much put Talk TV in that category, GB News 2, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Mail, are trying to preserve the status quo, and that includes pushing either the Conservative Party or Reform UK. So Julia then went on to describe Restore Britain as a minnow in terms of membership. Now, that was odd for me, because how on earth can you say that when the party now has more members than, say, the Conservative Party or the Liberal Democrats, who are certainly not described as minnows?
You are a minnow in terms of membership, in terms of mass appeal, in terms of name recognition, even if you need it, when it comes to Reform and Nigel Farage. Why do you think it's appropriate for, Rupert Lowe to think that he can call the shots?
Well, Julia, that YouGov poll that was out today did not actually prompt Restore Britain. So that 4% who are polling for us have gone out of their way to name us as the party that they are supporting, which demonstrates a certain level of enthusiasm base. And as you say, we have been doing increasingly well in recent by-elections. And if Andy Burnham keeps his word, there won't be a general election for a number of years. And a great deal can happen in that time. And as more members of the public get to learn our platform and indeed our leader Rupert Lowe, more and more are coming on board, and that I see no reason to think that will stop, because the agenda that we're offering, the agenda that we have extended to reform, is the one that the British people want and the one that the country needs.
Right, Charlie, the time is against us. We're going to have to leave this. Campaigns Director and Spokesman at Restore Britain. I do hope genuinely, it's a genuine offer. I'd like you to come back on so we can discuss some of the issues you've raised in more depth. I hope you'd say yes to that. Even though I'm a mouthpiece for the mainstream media, of course.
So it ended positively from Julia's side to an extent, but not from Charlie's, who went on X to write, establishment mouthpieces like Julia Hartley-Brewer refuse to acknowledge that being British is about more than believing in democracy and queuing. Their ideas are the reason that white British people faced becoming a minority in their own homeland. Other Restore figures were equally scathing, like policy staffer Harrison Pitt, who wrote, embarrassing, incurious, emotionally incontinent behaviour from Julia Hartley-Brewer here. My friend and colleague Charlie Downs conducted himself with intelligence, grace and composure. But what's interesting is that for the wider right, this interview has sparked an existential debate. And it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you're obviously going to get some people who say, oh, well, of course, we're going to have different colours of people come into this country, but at the same time, you also need to think about the fact that if you do not acknowledge that the white British ethnicity matters and should be preserved, then who knows where we're going to go. Independent broadcaster Nick Dixon argued this clip demonstrates the whole problem. The idea of a people wishing to survive in their own home is so basic you can put it in a movie and a 5-year-old will instinctively grasp its compelling moral force. But our media will never accept the blunt framing Charlie uses, hence the language games Farage ends up playing. That said, Charlie is only saying exactly what Rupert said in his video, but perhaps an elder statesman gets slightly more leeway. Ultimately, employing demonising rhetoric in order to make a fundamental human aspiration seems extreme is a terrible thing to do, and it's what the left have been getting away with for decades. And it's not just white Brits on the right who feel that way. Interestingly, to non-white human beings who I would say are more aligned with reform than restore, but definitely conservatives, disagreed with Julia to some extent, including outspoken, regular-based and bougie, who pointed out, I usually agree with Julia, but questioning why the extinction of a race is a problem is crazy. Yes, there are many ethnic minorities like myself who are born here, raised here, and do not identify or know anything else apart from Britain. However, without the indigenous English, Scots, Welsh, we would not have the British culture that us ethnic minorities love, adore, and identify with today. Demographic replacement of any race should never be up for debate. So yes, the demographic replacement must be prevented at all costs, and Reform UK are the only party with the manpower, machinery, and competence to prevent this. Even major reform supporter Myron Senthil Nathan argued, I think Julia is wrong to downplay the concerns over white demographics, but Charlie Downs is doing his usual performative nonsense. I repeat, Restore Britain has no policy that is drastically different to reform when it comes to this issue. Rupert has repeatedly stated those who came legally are legitimate. They will not even abolish indefinite leave to remain. They will do nothing extra for the native Brit compared to the law-abiding British citizen from India. If you are concerned about white demographics, vote Reform. Their policy is stronger. Also, they actually have a chance of forming the next government. Now, others on the left of Reform UK took a purely, I guess it's what you would describe, even though you know I hate these terms, but the civic nationalist position, like ex-Tory Tim Montgomery, who sided with Julia, writing, "This is Julia Hartley-Brewer at her principled best. Restore's obsession with skin colour is one reason I couldn't support any arrangement Reform could conceivably choose to have with them, and I'm confident Nigel Farage won't do so. It is disappointing that the Conservative Party does have a relationship with Rupert Lowe." But Julia versus Charlie also sums up a growing, and I would say, problematic snobbery from the Reform media elites to the young men within the Restore movement. You know, a lot of them come on this show who I have huge respect for because they are so concerned about having to try and stay in this country for decades to come, given the demographic catastrophe we are facing. And I think that snobbery was summed up when Restore supporter and independent journalist Montgomery Toms challenged Talk TV host Alex Phillips, she is most definitely Reform UK aligned, over her support of Nadine Dorries. Monty simply wrote, "Imagine listening to someone who championed the online safety bill." So that was it. One sentence. And Alex replied like this. "Imagining to a boy barely out of school who hasn't had a real job, has never been elected, has never worked in real frontline politics, wants to be an influencer, and has an ego the size of Jupiter, dispute," I presume she means despite, "having no real world experience to back it up. You are so far from the real players, son. So far. You haven't a clue what's shaking down. Those of us with the real inside track think you're a rather silly boy." Now, how is that helpful to anyone? Alex, how is that helpful to Nigel Farage, your man, who knows that he is losing young white men in droves to Restore? I just hate that snobbery. I mean, seriously. If there is anyone under 30 who is deeply worried about this country and prepared to get involved in politics, I damn well support it. And you know, that's why I have everyone from Based and Bougie to Sophie Corcoran to Montgomery Toms to Charlie Downs on this channel as often as possible. I adore the fact that we have these young people involved in politics. What on earth is Alex Phillips doing attacking them simply because of their age? I do think the problem with the young white British men is one of the reasons why party chairman Lee Anderson has been sent by Reform UK to Calais to try and bring the attention back to the ongoing invasion of the UK, which is prompting this demographic debate. He did a very good job. Watch this.
Just going to roll the whole time, Lee.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Hello guys. Everybody speak English? You speak English? No. Anybody speak English? So we're struggling so far to find anybody that speaks English. Speak English? Anybody speak English? Do you want to come to England? Alla Inglaterra. That is it? Yeah. Do you want to... I'm not allowed to go back to Egypt. To Egypt? Why? What's wrong with Egypt? I've been to Egypt. It's nice there. To Egypt. So why doesn't he stay in France? بديمقراطية حقوق الإنسان بيعطوا فرص.
Say the UK's got a good government and they'll give us papers.
We've got friends in the UK. Yeah. Did they arrive on small boats? بالبحر.
Yeah.
On boat, yeah.
I need to be UK.
How much does it cost you? How much money?
I pay money,
How much?
1,200 euro. I'm not going to UK, I'm going to Scotland.
Why Scotland?
Yeah, I like it.
You like Scotland?
Edinburgh. Yeah.
Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Yeah, good city.
Yeah.
Good city. Do you think you'll like it there?
I don't have more skill. Look my finger.
Let's go. Drive. En route now, Jay.
Yeah. Coming to a HMO on the street near you, that is, trust me.
And he's right. And of course, they're already everywhere. This is Birmingham today.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Councillor Tajuddin. I am pleased to share that following resident concern and my request to the Birmingham City Council, 2 CCTV cameras have been installed in Lozells Ward. 1 CCTV camera in here Carlisle Road and Huntington Road Junction. One more CCTV camera in here, Hunters Road and Charleville Road Junction, to tackle fly tipping. This camera will help catch offender and keep our neighborhood cleaner and safer. Thank you, Birmingham City Council, Cabinet Member, Councillor Haris Khalik, and Better Birmingham Group and Waste Management team to put the camera in Lozel's work. Also, thank you to the Lozel's residents who regularly reported to the fly tipping. Together, we are making Lozel's better. Thank you.
And when Alex Phillips is criticising patriotic young men like Montgomery Toms, I just wonder who she would rather have making a stand. Is it men like this? People who I describe as suicidal empaths. Look at this. A young English football fan wearing an England football shirt, seen violently tearing down the St. George's Cross. And those are the young leftists who we should be very worried about. And this emergency situation is sparking some to give up on politics altogether, like Tommy Robinson ally Danny Tomo, who announced British politics is completely fucked. None of them will save this country. Stop wasting your time hoping they will. By 2063, the white population will be a minority in the UK. I mean, I think it will actually happen before that, Danny, if I'm honest. But he added, while others keep talking online, we keep building. We are carefully handpicking the most disciplined, proud British and English men ready to stand firm. He then posted this video of his recruits and added, in the 1940s, our grandfathers took their stand. Now it is our turn. Over the coming months, we will continue selecting and forging a mass resistance. This is what putting your money where your mouth is looks like. What are you doing? And now, the superstar panel. Kelly J. Keane, Rebecca Jane, Father Calvin Robinson, all with me for the entire... Father Calvin, can I start with you? For obvious reasons. You describe yourself, I believe, as half white, half black. So in that debate, who's correct? Julia Hartley-Brewer or Charlie Downs?
I think there's some nuance in that debate. I really do. I think they were both doing the best they could. I think Charlie is right in that we should be concerned about the demographic change in our country. This is a white British country, always has been and always should be. But I get where Julia is coming from. I think it's a very noble stance. I think, honestly, what she's trying to do is protect people like me, who are half white English, half something else. Like I'm half Afro-Caribbean, and there are many people who are only half English. I think that's where she's coming from in trying to say that skin color isn't the most important aspect. But what she's doing is saying that skin color isn't an important aspect at all. And that's completely wrong. And Charlie is right in that skin color is important. Britain is a white country. England is a white country. English people are a white people, and they are being replaced, systematically being replaced. And that needs to be stopped and prevented. I as someone who's only half white and also half black, I don't think the whole country should look like me. I think the whole country should look how it always has looked. And I'm not saying there can't be a minority of people who are of ethnic minority backgrounds, etc., but Britain should always be predominantly white, English and Christian. And the only way to get there really and truly is to restore something like the Test Act and say, look, to stand for office in England, you should be white, English, Christian, male. Simple as that.
Well, I'll come to Rebecca and Kelly J on the latter point in one moment, but I just want to stick to this issue of demography to begin with before moving on. So, Rebecca, great to have you back. I think the thing that sort of confused me is Julia was very much sticking to this idea of white. Well, it's, you're talking about white. What Charlie was trying to say is, no, white British people are a group, an ethnic group on the census. And it's like, just say it was Japanese, no one would be saying, well, why are you making such an issue with Japanese? It's like, just because the term is white doesn't mean it's all about skin color. Do you understand the point that I'm making?
I understand the point that you're making, and I think that the whole conversation was a really big distraction, actually, and they're making it all about skin colour and everything else. But actually, if we go to the root of this issue and if we look at what the voters are actually concerned with, they are concerned that we are, getting rid of our culture and we're not preserving it and we're not acknowledging it, and that we will ultimately become a very different nation. That's okay to ask. And then to divert onto all these tangents about who is what colour and whatever else, I don't think that that is the point that we should be looking at here, because it is not wrong to be patriotic about your country and about the country's values. And I think it's really sad, actually, that what feels to be happening is that whereas the left is constantly attacked the right all the time, the right is now eating itself up. And again, that is diverting away from the important factors of what we need to look after and to preserve for our country.
It's interesting, Kelly J, because there are some people, and I'm just looking at the live chat now, for example, and the triggered Christian is saying, actually, this is all about religion, not race. But I do think that is a big difference, Kelly J, between the Reform UK position and the Restore Britain position, because, of course, Restore Britain is very much opposed to the Islamist takeover too. But I'd say much more than Reform UK, they also appreciate that ethnicity is part of the immigration debate. So who are you aligned to, Kelly Jane? Charlie Downs or Julia Hartley-Brewer?
I'm aligned to whoever is going to get in power and stop the boats and change the economy and make this country great again. And I don't actually think that's going to be Rupert Lowe. I think Nigel Farage is the only man to bet on. And I have no particular skin in that game. The man ghosted me after meeting me. So it's not like I'm a big fangirl. But,
Nigel Farage met you and then ghosted you?
Yeah, I was mid-call with Richard Tice when they ended the call. I went for lunch with Lee and Richard, and then I met Nigel, and then for whatever reason, I never heard from. Well, I heard from Richard, and then mid-call he had to go, and then I've never spoken to them again. So
do you think they thought you were too extreme? Because this is something that often happens.
Maybe they were just bowled over by my enormous charm, and maybe they couldn't handle it.
It's understandable.
I don't know why they ghosted me. It's not really that important to me because I've got some kids. I've got 4 of them, and I want a future for this country. And I don't feel that this distraction right now is getting us any closer to getting a right-wing government in office. And that's okay,
but Kelly J, can I tell you why it's important to me? Can I tell you why it's important to me that they ghosted you? Because you're not the only one, okay? There's a lot of brilliant people who I have huge respect for, like you, who I believe are absolutely imperative to save this country, who have the balls to, in your case, stand up for biological sex, but also now stand against Islamism, right? And so many people like you have been ghosted over the past couple of years by Reform UK. That is a huge... Have you too, Rebecca?
Yeah.
What happened with you?
I'm in good company then.
It's and here is why it's important. And I find it really sad actually when you just said that, I'm not important. Yes, you are. And here is why it is important, because they have an ego and they are not interested in anybody that they don't think is going to help them. And if you're not going to serve them, that's it. And this is exactly, and I know that we're going to talk about this later on, but this is exactly why they're saying what they have about Rupert Lowe as well. They do it to absolutely everyone because they think that they are invincible, because they think that they're going to get into power and that they don't need anybody to help them.
Yes.
So
I think they've realised now, Kelly J, that actually they do need allies to the right of them. But the problem is, I was warning 2 years ago, because remember, it wasn't just Rupert Lowe who they pushed away. It was all Tommy Robinson supporters, Kelly J. And I mean, I've literally seen you. We've spoken at one of the Unite the Kingdom rallies, right? But Richard Tice went on GB News just before that rally and said, we don't want to have anything to do with that lot. And he created really a real divide on the right. So I guess the point that I'm making is that, yes, obviously, you're correct. We need power to make any changes. But when people say Reform UK are the ones to bring together this broad coalition, I would just sort of argue if you're too extreme, if Rebecca Jane's too extreme, if Father Calvin Robinson is definitely too extreme, if I'm too extreme, actually they're not creating a broad coalition of the right, are they? They're pushing people away.
Can I just come back and say, I don't think I'm not important. I have a very healthy ego. I just mean, in the grand scheme of all of this, all that needs to happen is people need to put that X on that ballot, and those people get in. I can foresee right now, if the right continues as it is, then we'll be having Andy Burnham. The next election, we'll all be sat there going, oh, how did that happen? Andy Burnham's got, well, this is how it happens. It happens with these distractions. Andy Burnham cannot be in power the next time we go to the election, the next time there's a general election. We cannot have that man then taking office for another 5 years. This country will be finished. But
we have to address that this isn't a distraction. This is an important issue in that immigration is directly reflected in demographics. And so Julia said a similar thing to what both ladies on the panel tonight have said, that this is a distraction, this is a conflation, when actually there's an ethnic replacement happening right before our very eyes. White British people are being replaced by foreign people, and that has to be addressed. White people matter, British people matter, English people matter. I can trace my lineage. The English side of my lineage is 100% English, not part Irish, not part Dutch, not part German, but 100% English, going all the way back hundreds of years. I can trace the direct line that my family has lived in this place, in this particular region, forever. And that's important to my family.
It matters. And it
does matter to everyone, because the last time Kelly Jean and I had a conversation on X, she said he's not English. So clearly there is an element of people recognizing what it means to be English and what it doesn't mean to be English. These things do matter to people.
Kelly J?
That was just to be poke at you, to be honest, because I think you called me a Jezebel. But I don't mean it's a distraction. I think we need to talk about the economy. We need to talk about jobs. We need to talk about immigration. I think the rest of it will somewhat take care of itself. And I think that we will be looked after, and we as a demographic will be looked after, but it's not going to be looking after by having this huge conversation prior to an election. I think the policies will speak for themselves. You know, maybe we'll be a 100% white nation and we'll all be Muslim. I don't think that would be very good for any of us either.
No. On that we agree. All the things matter. The ethnicity matters, the religion matters, the language matters, the culture matters, all of it together collectively. So not one part of it is a distraction. Bring it all together. White, English, or white, British, Christian nation is a good thing.